to go get started because we have an action-packed advisory webinar for you guys, and this is our year end. We just kind of really love to share and look back at everything that we have done this year. And believe it or not, we are wrapping up the 21-22 school year. How many of you are done, if maybe in chat or a thumbs up, how many of you are done either this week or next week? So a few people. Next week, okay, I see that. We have some of our sites that this week, wow, we have some of our sites that are, they're wrapping up next week. My daughter's school is wrapping up this week. They're done as of Wednesday. Thursday, that's amazing to me. So so I want everybody to raise your hand up. Everybody raise your hand up and then go ahead and give yourself a nice pat on the back because you survived this year of coming out of distance learning, bringing everybody back into school, and then now we're at the tail end of it. And at the end, we can say, believe it or not, we did it. So not completely out of the woods, but we definitely did it. And it's amazing to see all that. So we'll turn it over to you, Grant, to share about our norms and everything else we're going to do.
Wonderful. So, number one, make sure your microphone is muted. You don't accidentally click that button in those key moments. So, everything in your background is going on. Keep that thing muted for attendance purposes. Just make sure your name is appropriate. I see an iPhone in our participant list, and that's probably not going to be helpful when we go to check attendance. So make sure you rename yourself if you need to, and we can tell who's here. And then in the chat, add any questions, comments, whatever, as we're rolling through today. And then, as always, remember that this is recorded, so we'll be able to share it after the fact and get some of this information out to the folks who couldn't be with us specifically today.
Perfect. All right. And so then let me kind of go over our agenda really quick. We're going to, like I said, we're going to look back at our year. We'll share with you some numbers, some data that we've collected from everybody who's participated in the program. Secondly, we're going to review and looking back, kind of share some of the things that some of the resources that we covered, and then review some of that data. And then we are going to do, we'll go over the stipend process. I will introduce you to our program support specialist, and we'll kind of talk about how you guys will invoice us, and we'll get our payments out to you. And then I'm super excited to share with you what we have coming for next year for the CTE TEACH program. So with that being said, Grant, I'm going to let you drive the looking back.
All right. So Chris likes to let me do this because he knows how much of a data geek I am. And I love looking at numbers and looking at stories and just trying to figure out what it's telling us. And the cool thing over the last few years that we've been involved with the CTE TEACH program is we've seen a lot of growth. And you can see that, number one, in that top left number with LEA participants. We've grown from an average of about 11 to 14 programs up to 26 in the last couple of years, which obviously increases the mentor teachers. We hit 50 at one point this year. This year, we've got new mentees of 209 who participated, so a pretty decent impact. And then if you look at those hours, it's crazy. For our mentors out there, that's what you all did. And that's only up to Q3. That's not even including Q4. That's a lot of hours of time spent. And so that pat on the back is well-deserved. I want to put one of those back scratchers in your hand so that way you can pat and then scratch, because you've been doing some pretty cool stuff. And then as we tool through the rest of the numbers there between the webinars and the YouTube videos, and social media follows, stuff like that. There's been some pretty great things going on this year. And we were talking earlier, just a real quick side note on the YouTube views. It seems like we've gotten a lot of hits on those this year, just because y'all know you can go back and look at those and review them or use them in any way that you want. And so hopefully we'll talk about it a little bit more. We'll see how those are beneficial moving forward.
And one thing I want to add is we did 2 conference presentations. One of them was very important to me because Grant and I actually presented together at Educating for Careers. And that was super cool to actually have you and I in the same room and doing that. That meant the world to me.
Yeah, that was fun.
It was really cool.
A good time.
Good time. All right. So this is the webinars that we did. Kind of wanted to do a quick brush stroke over it. We started in October, just kind of going over what your mentor core values are. And then we moved on to, in November, we had Orange Unified share what their orientation process is for new teachers. In January, we went over what a trauma-informed educator was. In February, we went over coaching for equity. We watched a snippet of Elena Aguilar's video that she did. This book is officially in the mail. If you've not received it already, it should be there shortly, but it is on its way to all of the mentors as we speak. In March, is when we did Educating for Careers, and we did an Educating for Careers Reunited where we had 2 of our presenters share their session from that. And then in April, we had the hipster Google guy come in who exploded everybody's brains on everything you can do in Google. And then just last week, we had Elena Hernandez, the marvelous mentor, share just kind of goal setting and how you can make goals for the upcoming years. So all of this, James did share this in chat, the links to this, and all of these are clickable. So at any of them you're interested in reviewing, you can click on them. It'll take you right to that recording of the webinar, and you can download the slides for free and gather all that information. So, all right. And Grant, I'll turn it back over to you.
Right on. So we're going to continue with a little bit of the data here, and I'm going to try not to do a ton of talking, but what we're going to share with you here are just some results from the mentees that you all are mentoring. So if you look at the data, the way that it's set up is on the left-hand side, we've got semester 1 responses. On the right-hand side, we've got semester 2 responses. So if you've had your participants respond to the surveys, then this is how they're structured. Also, a little note is that semester 1 we had nearly 90 responses, whereas in semester 2 we had nearly 40. So that changes some of the perspective a little bit, but it doesn't necessarily change what they shared with us. So if you look at the very first item there, the question asks, how supported do you feel by your school site or education agency? A majority of individuals in both semesters had a pretty high rating, so up to a 5, whereas 1 is kind of the low side, 5 is the high side. But you see that start to disperse a little bit in the spring. And we can, I'm sure, inject some context into that for our specific sites, why that answer might be there. But don't get too forthright in injecting all of that context, because these numbers are just information to help inform where we're at and where we're going. So what the candidates are feeling, and there's a lot going on that informs those numbers. That second question down, how supported do you feel by your CTE Teach mentor specifically? Those are all positive numbers. And we'll see a little bit later in some of the data that you can see the increase in the feelings of support by some of these mentees through this year. It's due in a lot of areas, and we'll look at that here in a minute. Next question, how often do you communicate with your CTE Teach mentor? And it changes, right? So that number is going to be kind of dynamic. The ones that we don't like seeing too much is the I don't, but sometimes that happens just by nature of the relationship, and we could technically justify that, but it also changes throughout the year, right? We see a pretty heavy percentage on the weekly, but the monthly and the daily changes as well as the other over time. So those are, where we kind of look at, and that's great because mentoring should fit the context and should fit what's going on. So that helps us understand a little bit better. Last question, how effective do you feel your CTE Teach mentor or CTE teacher mentor impacts your teaching? If you look at those numbers, pretty consistent, right? y'all are doing some great work. So moderately, very, and extremely, with the very being right there up towards the top. That means, you can pat yourself on the back again, and you can put 2 hands up, pat it twice, because you're doing some pretty good stuff. So on the next slide,
Grant, if I may, Zachary Roper has a question. Where can we find our individual feedback from our mentees? Is it available?
Yes. So for semester 1, if you guys go to your folders, there is an Excel sheet that has that information in there for each site. I haven't done semester 2 yet, but I definitely will wrap that up within the next couple of days. So yeah, but if you go to semester 1, you'll find it all there. I want to say semester 1's in your Q2 folder. Semester 4 will be in your Q4 folder.
Good question.
Yeah.
So the next set of data gets into kind of the qualitative aspect, if you will. And we ask the question, what challenges have you experienced as a new CTE teacher? As mentors, you all know this. As administrators, you have a pretty good sense of this. But I'm going to pause for a second and just read what's there on the screen. See what you can deduce. All right. So some things that come up for me, and you all can challenge this a little bit if you want, but in the very beginning, they're looking at management and setting up the classroom, trying to figure out the tools, trying to figure out what this environment of CTE looks like. Whereas in semester 2, for those of us who have been teaching for a long time, that's when they're really starting to dive into the standards. And it makes some of us questionable, what were they doing during the first semester? But it's all little telling, right? Because of everything that's going on for them. And it's not necessarily anything that's wrong. It's just where some new teachers are with their capacity on your sites. And we want to consider stuff like this as we think about our mentoring for next year, right? Of course, standards are going to be important, but the teachers are almost telling us here the standards aren't going to be important until they get the management and the understanding of the general environment down, right? So how can we help accelerate that piece so they can get on to the important stuff of the standards? So is there anything else that stands out to anybody?
Kenneth Carlson says, I see concerns, but growth.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Exactly. Good stuff. All right. So that takes us on to the next slide, which is just kind of a ranking, if you will, relative to the CSTPs. And well, technically, it could be for the TPEs for these new CTE teachers or the CSTPs, just depending on where they're at in their programming. But up towards the top in nearly every setting, they're looking towards developing as a professional educator, right? They feel like they need more help in that kind of sense, which probably tends more to the pedagogy and how they're building themselves out in that light. The interesting thing is semester 2, what area do they feel like they need more assistance? That's planning, instruction, and designing educational experiences or designing learning experiences. That's kind of an interesting one. And I pose the question, why are they looking at that one in the spring semester? Specifically, if we look at the time period of May, right? Why are they looking at that in May? And a potential answer or response to that could be, well, they're looking at planning for next year. So they're realizing what they did through this year, trying to think through how they're going to make their craft better for next year, and then looking for that assistance at this point in time. So everything else down on the list there where they feel supported makes a lot of sense in engaging students. That one was kind of inspiring. I like that piece. And I see Christine says there, they finally got their feet underneath them and have time to reflect on what they need. Apropos. Perfect. So that takes us into the next slide of information, some more qualitative responses, if you will. the specific area of teaching CTE where they would like more support, right? This is what they're saying across the state: assessment, grading strategies in the fall, classroom management, that's important, right? Clear understanding of how the whole PO purchase works, getting used to that environment. Then they're telling us in the spring semester, assessing, lesson planning, grading, curriculum, real world project ideas, developing resources and curriculum, right? So that's the time when we start to focus on it. And when Chris and I were talking about how we were going to work things throughout the year, one of the new things we did this year was the goal setting workshop in the end of the year, because we started thinking to ourselves from some of the data that we got last year, well, it's really that time of year when goals start to come up, because we're really looking forward to next year. And teachers, as we know, we don't really get a break, right? It's just cycles. It starts over again immediately. And, some of you probably have next year's calendars already laid out on your table, and you're putting stuff into your Google Calendar, trying to figure out what's going to happen and when, so that way you're ready to hit the ground running, regardless of what next year looks like. So that's just evidence to that cycle. But all important information for us to consider, both the CTE Teach administrative staff and for our mentors and LEA administrators out there. So Chris, is there anything else that stands out to you?
I think it's the same, everything you just said, is that the teachers are just trying to figure out what are the structures, what is the routines that I need to learn. And then second semester, they're starting to think about, okay, what am I going to do for next year? How am I going to tackle this content? So this is where I encourage all my mentors in the room to encourage your teachers. Just write down what they've done every day. I have all my new teachers do that, is I have, even if it's just like a little handbook calendar, whatnot, I tell them or even have your TAs do it for you. Just write down what you did that day. So that way you can go back and review your lessons and how long they took you, and just start building that map, is always so beneficial. And as you veterans all know that. Sweet. Well, now we want to take a moment to get some feedback from you guys. And so last year, this was a survey we sent out in advance. And what Grant and I decided we wanted to try out was doing this live. So if you could go to mentee.com, and you're going to put into, once you get there, you can pull it up either on a phone, on a second screen, whatever works best for you. And you're going to type in the 8-digit code there. And once you get in, it should, all it will say is this header that's here, 2122 statewide advisory. You can click on the little heart, lets me know that you're in. Another thing we were discussing earlier, one of the most important things this year is to remember, go see Top Gun this weekend. It's one of the greatest movies in the making.
I hope they don't mess it up.
Yes. Super excited. My wife, who you all have met in one of our webinars, I made the mistake of barely showing her that movie a year ago. She had never saw the original, so we watched it one day. She was not impressed. She's like, this is the most cheesiest jean short volleyball wearing movie I've ever seen. I was like, I guess you just have to see it when you're 10 years old. It means 40.
They just did things differently in that time, right?
Yeah, everything was cool to us. We all wanted to ride our motorcycles and wear leather jackets and just be cool.
Okay, so I feel the need for speed.
Need for speed. How no? All right, let's move on. So here's our first question. Eventually, there it is. Rate your satisfaction in the training you received relative to each of the 4 CTE Teach pillars. So this is a slider. You're going to do either extremely dissatisfied on one end of the spectrum, all the way to extremely satisfied on the other end of the spectrum. So these are the 4 pillars of CTE Teach, and how well do you feel CTE Teach kind of helped you with each of these pillars? And this is borderline nerve-wracking for Grant and I.
Yeah.
We love the evaluation, but it's like seeing it live. It's like, okay.
I had a teacher tell me at one point in time, you've got to be extremely comfortable with your craft to do something like this live, because it's like being in front of a targeting squad.
Yeah, and I'm all for it. I am all for it. Very cool. All right. Well, my numbers are still moving.
Good to know.
Okay. Move on to the next one. Please rate the benefit of each CTE Teach component. So we have 4 components there. One of them was the webinars we did every month. The other one was the modules we have on CTE Online. Also the media we put out, the videos, the links, all that kind of stuff. And then one of the things we added this year was the ability for you guys to meet with us one-on-one by just signing up via Calendly. That was a great find, thanks to Grant, and totally has changed my life.
We have a question in the chat, Chris, from Leslie's iPhone that asks, can we fill the survey out later? Because for some reason, Safari will not open the page.
I don't know if it'll let you fill it out later. I can try allowing it to be done asynchronously later on. If not, definitely you can put in chat and we'll download that later.
Yeah.
That's a great question.
Yeah, and if you want to keep everything relatively anonymous, you can just put it in a direct message to Chris, I guess. I mean, that won't be completely anonymous, but it'll keep it from the rest of the crowd. So it's up to you.
Awesome. I like that. The coordinator availability.
Yeah.
Trying to be available. Okay. Next question. Oh, we're still moving. Nope. All right. How often did you access CTE Teach PD modules that were available on CTE Online? Okay, cool. And again, we're not talking about just content on CTE Online. This would be just the specific CTE Teach modules. We have ones that are for early orientation, ones that were for like developing as a middle school teacher, all those kinds of things. Usually have the Apple attached to them. All right. Good.
Thank you for your honesty.
Yeah. Good. All right, here's one that's a little more challenging. Which webinars were the most useful for you? So for this one, you're going to basically rank which one was the most informational for you. If you did not attend, you don't have to choose that one. You can just hit submit. We're asked that you would only pick the ones that you attended. And that way kind of helps us gauge like what were some of the topics.
We know Chris has his eye on one of these, but we're not going to divulge which one.
I'll tell you when we're done. Yeah. Cool. Good information.
I love how this moves.
Yeah, it's pretty neat. It's neat to see.
It's like eating popcorn and watching a movie.
Yeah. Can you imagine being an administrator and then like doing this with your teachers live and in person? Like, rate me as your administrator.
Satisfaction of your service as an administrator being the topic.
Yeah. Please rate the satisfaction of how quickly you got your supply order. Yeah. Still moving.
Right on.
All right. Very cool. I think it's set. Oh, it's still going. Very cool. I wonder if it'll give you, I wonder if it did anything. Okay, it doesn't do anything while I hover. All right. Awesome. Okay. That, again, good information to know. And you guys, those of you who were in the program last year, we asked a very similar question as far as topics for webinars go. And a lot of these were selected from that survey that you guys filled out if you were around last year, to where we said, here's some things that we're thinking about doing. And then a lot of these were what we were selected from, last year's program. So it's neat to see that come to fruition. Okay, so for our last question, speaking of webinars, this is an open response to where we would love it if you could just let us know what topics do you think would have been beneficial for you to learn. If you are a new mentor, what else would you like to learn in this program? If you have mentored before, what other things would be beneficial? Just let us know. Do you need more Star Wars themed things? We need James to do guitar lessons. Keeping teachers motivated, that's a great one. Okay, I like the keeping things mainstreamed. It's definitely on our radar. Anything from Orange, I agree with that. They are phenomenal. Moving down. This is interesting. Just kind of know what the pay structure is. I know you can go on Transparent California, but I don't know if that is just per person or if that will give you like kind of the average of different LEAs. But it's an interesting thing to definitely bring up. Troubleshooting your mentees, common issues, ideas.
Availability and purpose of different CTE grants and funding.
So like a topic on like, here's how you can get funding for your programs. Yeah, that would be a great one. So I have to brag about a teacher. Her first year in the classroom is this year. She's teaching culinary for us, and she wrote a bunch of grants and got, gosh, what were they, James? She has these like hydroponic garden things in each of her classes. So they're huge. They're like almost to the ceiling. And kids are growing their own, herbs and lettuce and tomatoes and all sorts of stuff. And then actually cooking with them. And she, like year one out the gate, she wrote a grant to get all those. And she's got, I think, 2 of them. I'm working on a 3rd. So
that's awesome.
I think they originally started for like apartment dwellers, so they can, with the little space that they have, they can start growing their own herbs and vegetables, and fruits and so on.
She's got them in her class, and it's really neat to see kids using that. And so anyway, off the subject, but yeah, definitely. So how to get funding for things like that is a great idea. Keeping teachers motivated. So I see that one's come up a few times. Share out CTE job postings. So maybe share on EdJoin, what's available if people are looking for things. Yeah. Offerings from mentors on great opportunities. So a couple of things I see on here is people looking just to network, just general networking with each other. Learning to teach and connect with students. is of course very important. One thing I think needs to be worked on is CTE, is how to manage the facility tools, facility cleaning projects for sure. So even managing your classroom, like organization. Yeah, I think that's a great one. We had a new teacher as well. Like they've worked in a shop before, but they've never ran their own shop. So just even how do you organize all this stuff with all these different students? So very cool. Fantastic. Well, that is that. I will look to see if we can do this asynchronously. And if so, I'll send it out, but this is great information. I love it. So that we'll be able to take this and definitely use it to kind of build upon, what we have coming. So very cool. All right, so now we're going to dive into our program invoicing process. And so before we do that, I want to introduce somebody to you. And there she is. Sorry, there's like a million windows. I always feel like I'm in romper room trying to do this. So Megan Lamas, if you could just say hi to everybody.
Hello, everybody.
Yay, so glad she's here. So Megan is, one of the greatest people in the world. She and I actually first started kind of together at CRIROP. We were in a building together. We were always pulling on like pranks and whatnot with everybody in that department. And so then she has moved up into being an amazing support specialist. And so she left ROP for a little bit, went to the county, and then was there for a few years. And then we were so excited she came back. And the first thing we did was throw her into CTE TEACH. And so she is going to help us this year with closing out CTE TEACH and helping with the invoicing and the processing and all that. And any questions you have, you can send us, but I'll kind of go over just a really quick what the end of the year is going to look like. So the first thing you want to do is you want to make sure all of your activity logs are submitted to us for the year no later than June 30th. That is the absolute cutoff of when we can have, or when we can start sending out invoicing and all that kind of stuff. So, however, I will tell you, if you can get it into us by the end of May, we will start working on them now. So you don't have to wait till the end of June to do it. You can start doing it now and we'll start moving forward. Once that is all submitted to us, we will then send a statement to your administrator via Adobe Sign. Megan will send that. Your administrator will sign it via Adobe. And then once that is done, then an invoice needs to be created that is then sent to CRIROP so that we can then, Megan can then take that and process that payment. So anything I'm missing in there, Megan?
Nope, you hit pretty much all the points. Again, if you guys have any questions regarding any of the invoicing process, please feel free to email me at any time.
Yeah. So just to reiterate, administrators, you're going to get an Adobe Sign, I don't know what they're called, the email. All you do is you click it. It tells you how much to invoice this for. You're going to sign it off, but then you need to take that statement to your business department and tell your business department, send an invoice to CRIROP for this amount. And again, if you have questions about that, we can definitely work with you all individually. So the invoice itself can be created to add attention to CRIROP. To CRIROP attention CTE TEACH. This is the address there. We've said this in the MOU that we will pay $50 an hour for every hour mentored, up to 150 hours per mentor. And again, the quickest way to do this is if you send all this information to Megan, she will then pull it and then start sending those processes. And then, as I said before, you can submit it even as early as by the end of this month, and then we will start processing that, ASAP to close out our books for June.
And Chris, do you mind if I jump in just real quick on it?
Absolutely.
So within that whole process too, it doesn't happen often, but sometimes if there's a discrepancy in what's in the logs that may not be eligible for reimbursement, then that'll happen and that'll be acknowledged during that signing process when the administrators do that piece. So then that'll take a little sidestep, make sure that everything's rectified, and then it'll still be on the LEA to make sure the invoice gets generated per what we can approve. So just keep that in mind. It doesn't happen often, but sometimes it does, and we just need to make sure we keep the train going and that we can't process anything until we have an invoice.
Correct. Awesome. James, any questions in chat or anything we need to cover before we move on?
Yeah, so we have a question. Just to clarify, mentorship can still take place in June after school is over?
Yeah, that's a tricky one. So yes, you can still mentor in June. You can still count hours in June. For that, we're just saying the quicker you get your logs in, the quicker we can start sending out those payments. So I know there's still mentoring that goes on in June. A lot of our schools are wrapping up now. It just depends on how quickly do you want us to turn around that payment. So good question. Any others? No, we're good.
I guess I'll just add the one little bit on that we mentioned a bit last year is that if for administrators specifically, you need reimbursement to account in this fiscal prior to June 30, then you'll want to make sure that those logs get turned in ASAP and there's still that turnaround time. So if for some reason you wanted to account for hours all the way through June 30 and we didn't get the invoicing process done until the middle of July, then you wouldn't be able to account for that reimbursement until fiscal next year. So just keep that in mind, depending on your school's processes. If that matters, maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. But that's just something to keep in mind.
Couple more questions. If we mentor through July and August, just add the hours in late August.
So technically, if you're talking about for this year's program, the program did not allow for hours until October. I want to say, Grant, I'm forgetting. Was it September we started, or?
I think it was, we had an October 1 start.
Okay.
Yeah.
So anything from that time period going forward between that and June 30 of this year is what you can claim. Anything from October 2021 through June 2022 is the time period that you can claim hours.
I have another one from Dre. Just to clarify, I believe I placed my invoice into the shared folder. I need to actually have my business manager mail the invoice, correct?
That would be easier, yes. If you could send all your invoices to Megan, that's the quickest way, is for Megan to get them directly to her, and then we can start moving forward with them.
And it is preferred to actually have those emailed because that will just make the process quicker on both ends. So then that way I can get it processed and out to you guys.
Perfect. So now looking ahead, this is what I'm excited about. So to do that, I'm going to share with you a new site, and you guys can join me. If you go to cteteach.com, it will take you to our brand spanking new site. So I won't go over every tab, but I'll kind of share with you what we have on the horizon. So we have our About Us, just kind of the background of what CTE TEACH is. But we are offering 2 mentor programs next year. We've kind of talked about this off and on throughout the year. But right now, you guys have all participated in the LEA mentor program, meaning CTE TEACH has provided a stipend to your school or your district. And then in that, you give that to your mentor for your new teachers at your school site to be mentored. In addition to that, we are planning to bring on 12 to 15 industry sector mentors across the state that will be employed directly by CRIROP and CTE TEACH. And the purpose of this is so that we can offer industry-specific mentors statewide, no matter where you are, that you can get some additional help with wherever you are needing support. So I told Grant, my dream scenario is I get a brand new teacher who's teaching health and science. They go to a credentialing program. They get their credential in health and science. They contact CTE TEACH, and CTE TEACH gives them a health science teacher that will help them that year. And they'll help them with teaching medical, with getting involved in HOSA, all that kind of stuff. So So we're excited about that. If you continue on this webpage, if you click on more information, it'll give you the specifics of what each of those are, and you can join the interest list. The applications are almost done for both of them, and then we will be sending those out pretty quick here. And I'm excited. I'm excited that we are bringing on industry-specific mentors. And a lot of this came from just people reaching out to us across the state, just looking to be mentored. They did not have a mentoring type of program in their district. They were just looking for somebody to support them. But we also still wanted to continue to serve each individual school and district. So that's why we're going to kind of do both. And I'm excited about it. So any questions about any of that? It's fun stuff. So the other thing we're going to do, how many of you have ever heard of CTE Online? A couple of raising hands. How many of you know that CTE Online is now California Educators Together? A couple of you are like, yeah, I've heard of it. So all of the content that CTE Teach had on CTE Online is now getting moved off, and we are revamping it. So James, who has been speaking, is going to be a part of CTE Teach full-time starting July, and he is going to be a part of revamping all of the modules, the early orientation module, and they will now live here under the online module. So if you have a brand new teacher that needs to go through early orientation, all they will have to do is go to CTE Teach, click on online modules, and then they can get right to where they need to go. We are collaborating with Canvas, and in Canvas, I'm super excited about it because all of our users will be able to manage their own password. You don't have to send an email and request a password. Our users can manage their own password. And then when they go through a module, they will get a certificate at the end of it that they can then turn in to administrators or to their credentialing agency. And the other thing I'm excited about is we are going to build modules specifically for CTE administrators. And so this has come out of the need for sometimes a school administrator will be handed CTE. They'll say, you're in charge of that now. And CTE is completely foreign to them. It's just something that they're not familiar with. And so these modules will help with them understanding what are pathways, what is work-based learning, all these things that we have in our CTE world. They can kind of go through those modules and just really learn what CTE is. So I'm excited about it. Any questions about that? No, we're good. All right, so our media will continue to live here. We will have all this stuff here, LinkedIn and Twitter and Facebook and all that. We are going to add more resources here. So far, we just have our Star Wars thing that we made a couple months ago, but we are going to take all the resources that we have and actually catalog it here. So if you're looking for something that's specific for, let's say, like a mentor observation, we will put that information here. If you're looking for classroom management stuff, we're going to start dropping all that here. And all you have to do is just go to ctteach.com and then be able to get to all of this. And then the last thing will be our upcoming events. As you can see, we have our webinar today is already listed here, but then all of the webinars we will start populating, and all the events that we have coming up will be here. And all you have to do is go to ctteach.com and it'll take you right to this site. And even if in the last, I guess I'll go over the last page, all of our contact info. So I'm on there, James is there, Megan's there. And so we're excited that, we can share all this with you and just really, see this program grow. So any questions, James? Anything else?
You said it all, sir. We're going to have everything all in one house and make everything easier for you and completely interactive.
Very cool. Anything to add, Grant, before we move on?
I'm sad to see that my contact information will no longer be there.
We'll get to that. So,
but no, I think you covered it pretty well, sir.
Awesome. Very cool. Okay, so we're going to start wrapping up then. One of my favorite all-time people in the world is Fred Rogers. Many of you know this already. In fact, I keep this book next to my, I have a crying chair in my office. for teachers to sit here and cry when the days are too tough. And so I keep this book next to it to kind of give them a little pep talk. But one of the things I love about Fred is that he loves teachers. And so I've shared this quote many times before, but instead of me saying it, I'm just going to let Fred say it for himself.
And it's such a lofty profession, that of teacher. Imagine giving what you have learned to somebody else. There have been people who have given me the compliment of being a teacher, and I take that as a very big compliment.
All right. So to kind of wrap up, this is our contact info. If you do have questions about the invoicing, about next year's program, any of that. So before we wrap up, I am sad to say that Mr. Grant Ermis is no longer a Californian. He has moved, and then some of you already know this. He has moved to Texas. Grant, do you want to share a little bit about just what it is that you are doing?
Ooh, it's hard to put into a soundbite. So I am the CTE coordinator for Temple ISD, just about an hour north of Austin. And I have a staff of about 31 CTE teachers here in facilities, brand new facilities, feels like, that measure about 133,000 square feet. Between 13, 14 different CTE programs. So I've actually talked to some of y'all on the call, and I'd love to do some cross-state collab. So if y'all need anything, feel free to reach out. If you need some pen pals in health science, in auto, in manufacturing, whatever that looks like, I'm sure we could get something going. But yeah, so that's what I'm doing in a nutshell. And I'm definitely going to be missing my California peeps.
Absolutely. And you will be missing In-N-Out as well.
No, I won't. No, they are close enough. We have one in.
Are they? Okay, that's good. Approved. So Grant's information is there. That is his new email. If you do want to shoot him a message, just ask him, how he's doing. If, any questions like that, it is there for you. And I'm sad to see him go. We have worked. So we both came into CT Teach together the last 2 years. We were both brand spanking new to it. And it's been just an honor to work with him. He doesn't know this. So what we're going to do is if you click on this apple, it is going to open a Padlet, and I'm going to put this in chat. And what I would like for you guys to do is if you could send him just your appreciation, your fond farewells, or until next time, and just let this guy know how much we've appreciated the work he's done in mentoring our teachers. And then that is your exit ticket for the day. And that is your exit ticket for the year. And if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to us, and we will see you hopefully next year back in the program. So,
love it. Thanks, guys.
Hello.
Greetings.
Popcorn?
Mm-hmm.
You are in a popcorn office. I've never in my life been able to, I've never worked in an office where people just eat popcorn. I've
Really?
always wanted to.
Why not?
It's just not a place that, I don't know, people just don't. It's like one of my lifelong ambitions. I want to work in like a popcorn place. Say, hey man, get some popcorn. You want some? Yeah.
It's literally a staple in my diet, because if I don't have food on a regular basis, then it's bad news bears.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. It reminds me, so I don't know if you remember Tron or not, but it reminds me of the beginning of Tron, where he gets called up to the dude who's Tron. He gets called up to the main guy's office, and this other guy's like, hey man, can I have the rest of your popcorn? And I'm like, that's where I want to work.